Okay, thank you for joining us for another session of the Ruby Hour. I'm Shelby Ring. I am our host today, and y'all, I have somebody very special with me. I have Sebastian Zuleta with me. He is an amazing composer, and he is a music editor. That cool backstory, I was just in LA for a hot minute, and my intention was I wanted to see something that had a grassroots feel to it and just get a pulse of the creatives in LA. And a friend of mine and I, we found the showing for a film called Unidentified Objects, and there was a Q&A session afterwards, and Sebastian and Leland Franco and Matthew Jeffers and Sarah Hay, the two of the main actors for this film, it just was the coolest thing to hear their creative process. I'm so excited, Sebastian, that you took the time today to chat with us, and I want to dive in and hear what is the life of someone who is a composer. How do you drop into your creative genius? How did you get started in the space of sound design and music composing?
Shelby, thank you for having me. And I didn't know the backstory how you ended up in our screening. So that's awesome. I'm glad it all worked out and we got to meet and we're here. So that's a very good question. I think it all really started with music for me. At an early age, I just fell in love with music. And I remember one of my, earliest memories with music is going to a classical music concert with my family, with my parents, and getting on top of the chair or on the alley and just conducting the music. And I was just feeling it. And yeah, so I think for me, it's just music is magic, basically. I keep thinking about how is it possible that this instruments like a violin, a wooden box with steel strings, and you have a bow, and then somehow it resonates and it moves through the air and it gets to your ears and then to your heart and makes you feel something. So that to me is what brought me to where I am, and continues calling me hey, there's more, keep exploring, keep going, keep learning. And yeah.
That's such a cool journey, because I always find it really interesting to hear people's origin story of, was it something that hit when you were younger? Did you fall into it? So to hear that you were in a classical concert environment and it just pulled on those literal heartstrings, that's so cool. Now, What's your process? My first thought when I started thinking about what could be the snapshot of your life, so the film Unidentified Objects, your brother helped direct it. And how did you guys...
He's a director.
What? So how do you guys, when you were growing up, where did you grow up, and where were those little blips of genius showing up when you guys were younger?
We grew up in Colombia, in a city called Medellin, and I grew up there up until I was 19 when I moved to the States to go to college. Same with my brother. He graduated from high school and he moved here as well, but he had all his like high school there. And it's funny because I never thought I would be doing this. I didn't even know it was a job until I was like maybe towards the end of high school. And especially when I got to college, I was like, oh, this is actually something that I could do for a living. But I want to just specifically to my brother, we grew up together, we played and all that. But when he was in his senior year for high school, we have a 2-week like project that you can go intern anywhere you want, and like the independent study project. And so he originally wanted to get into like creating and designing boats and sailboats and like something very different. But I'm a little bit older than he is. So I had already graduated at college and I was working in the film industry, and we also loved movies growing up and all that. But when he was in high school, he's like, hey, like this film industry thing, this is really cool. So for his project, he interned at a production company in Medellin. And then he set off to record his first short film. And so I wrote the music for the short film. And that was a very long time. And that was like the start of this beyond being brothers relationship and being able to create things together. And we've collaborated in many other projects and short films and commercials. And then this is our first feature for both of us, him as a director and for me as a composer. But yeah, I think I have to hand it off to my brother. Is amazing. I am very lucky to have him as a brother. He is a force. He just goes for it. He of course, it takes a whole team to put a film together, but his energy and his drive and his passion and his like setting the bar really high, just like I think, I mean, we mentioned this on our Q&A, but he just pushed us all to be the best that we could, so we could create the film that we did and that we feel very proud of.
In the Q&A, I remember how Matthew Jeffers was describing how specific there would be certain scenes where he would really purposefully step in and say, I want you to feel that more. I want you to push me further into this scene that I really feel it and that I'm emanating that. In that part of the production process, which I'm so curious, what was that experience like for you in the sense of, I'm sure every project is different. Were you ever on site for any of the active production times?
I wasn't, and my brother lives in New York. I live in LA, and we were like COVID times, so basically
pandemic life.
Unless you like really needed to go somewhere, we just stayed put. And thanks to technology and how much it's advanced in the last couple of years, even like through the pandemic, everything was remote. But we were in constant communication about early on. Like we started brainstorming about what the music would be for Unidentified Objects from the script. I read the script. We started brainstorming. One of the most important things for me in every project, and this one was definitely key, was like finding the right tone for the film. Because the early cuts of the video, like the picture, it was a lot more like, it was comedic, but in a very different way, where they had like music that was like very like upbeat, and it was funny and it made like one scene work, but then you saw it like in context and you're like, I don't think this is it. I started writing music while they were in production. He was sending me like videos of, hey, look at this scene. And so it all serves as inspiration for the music. One of the early things in finding the tone is finding what our instruments are going to be. And it might be very like oversimplistic, but we were like, aliens, synthesizers, awesome, let's do it. And I grew up like listening to classical music. I love orchestra, I love guitars and all that stuff. But for this one, let's dive in and write a synth score, like fully on synthesizer score. So I got, for my birthday, I asked my family, they could pitch in and give me like my first analog synthesizer, because I always like work inside the computer and all that. But this is actually right there.
Cool.
That, and then I saved up and I bought a few more, but it was like really exploring sounds and finding tones. So I was creating different ideas, like loose ideas where it was just like one sound that sounded very weird, or actually a little bit more complete ideas. At first it was like, no, that's not right, maybe this, no, that is too dark, and fine-tuning our communication. Because believe it or not, I've known him all my life, but we've had different experiences, especially after I left Colombia. I came to Florida, then to LA, and then my brother went to LA and then New York. But we've lived different experiences defining what words meant musically. So that's why I think references were very important for us. Hey, what does this music make you feel? What does this other music make you feel? And I remember sending him like a chart of emotions. Hey, if you listen to this piece of music, can you circle what it makes you feel? And that way I could fine tune whenever he said, hey, I want this to be more dark. I understood that dark, like that word for him, it meant like deeper and more emotional. And so I could now translate that in music, because in other contexts I would hear dark and it would be like ominous and scary. But in this context, it was like, no, we need to go deeper and we need to explore like those sounds. So yeah, that's a little bit of the background, how we got there.
Wow. That's so cool that just the vocabulary of defining what words meant musically, like that's such a cool, it's an abstract space. And yet I think that every single person would know where they hit with certain songs and where it takes them. That's awesome. The idea to send the spectrum of emotions and say, yeah, pick one of these as you hear this. Wow. That sounds like very layered in your process.
Yeah. And I think talking about music is hard. And the idea, what I try to do with every filmmaker that I work with is, let's not talk about musical terms, but let's talk about what we can maybe all relate more as humans, because not everyone is a musician. And sometimes you have directors and producers that are musicians, but I try to stay clear of talking about musical terms, because as a composer, it is my main job is to translate music into emotions, into the tone that we want in the film. So whenever, hey, how does this make you feel? When maybe in a scene, where should the music shift where should it stop? Sometimes the best solution is maybe for the music to stop and let the actors do their thing and get out of the way. So when the music comes back, it's even more powerful and it means something different. It doesn't just like continue going throughout getting in the way. So yeah, it's a little bit of all that.
I'm thinking of moments like in Unidentified Objects where the pause in the music and the break in the music, it was like comedic timing. It added a layer of the editing from how a scene was panning out, and then the cuts to like it's abrupt, or it's that same, it catches you off guard, which then is a thrill of, I wasn't expecting that. That's awesome. What genre would you classify Unidentified Objects as in terms of the musicality?
I think it was like a sci-fi drama. Even though it has like this like dark comedic moments, I think the function of the music in Unidentified Objects is to give us that other layer that's behind everything. And Peter is a very troubled person, and he's had a hard life, and he's in pain, and he doesn't always, it's like an undercurrent that's there, but he's very aggressive and very like protecting himself and like setting boundaries and all that. So the music helps as this almost like backdrop or third layer that's behind what we're seeing on screen. And that's also what I love about music for film, just combining it with images. It's like it has the power to either tell us and support exactly what we're seeing, or even go deeper and share with us something that, a subtext that it's not there, but we can feel it. It's
like the music, I think that there's so many layers to music, sound design, sound scoring, because it's one of those things where it's like when you do it well, the viewer may not even realize it, but they're being affected by it. Whenever I'm training our editors, I use language like the music shapes the listening of how they recall their memories. If we're doing a memory film for a family, it's the most top secret, sneaky thing that it really does drop people and invite people into an energy that you're wanting to convey and connect with. That's such a cool process. What, in terms of you as an artist, as a creative, as a professional, when are your most productive times of day?
I think usually when there's a deadline throughout the day, but I think mornings or nights, probably very late at nights, is when I get going. Afternoons are hard. I don't know what happens. Probably lunch is just like crash, and I'm not very useful after lunch.
I'm worthless. I'm so worthless. I'm like, I can talk to people in the afternoon, but anything critical thinking wise, no. When you say late at night, is it like, I have a friend that he's a coder with Ruby on Rails, and so he's like insanely specific, and his peak time is like 2 to 6 a.m. When you say late night, what's your sort of time slot where you just can lose yourself in your design?
I think probably from like 10 to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's weird. Like I'm 6 p.m. like, and I'm like crashing. Oh man, I need to go to sleep now. And then I don't know, like 9, 10, and I just like, oop, I'm ready to go. What's happening? And my wife is like, really? Yeah. You were about to pass out like a couple hours ago. What happened?
Yeah, and then there's some sort of creative thing that happens. I was cracking up in the Q&A session when you were describing the experience of getting to explore with the different synthesizers, and you're like working on certain sounds, doing these loops, and she's like, hey babe, could you put headphones on or something? Like that made me laugh.
Yeah. I mean, she was very patient with me, because what happens with these synthesizers is like they have a bunch of knobs and like cables, and you can patch and run them through like effects and reverb and all that, and delays and all that stuff. But it takes a while to dial them in and find the sound that you're looking for, or something that could work. So a lot of it is just noise. It's a noise that doesn't really make sense. It's not in a groove. It's not like it's just like this. And yeah, I really put the recorder like record and just started like turning knobs and trying out things, and also learning, because it's a whole instrument. If you learn how to play guitar, it's like you're learning the synth, and each synth is a different world basically. These are kind of like very odd, and like I said, I hadn't done any of this before, so I knew like how they worked, but not specifically each one. So yeah, my wife was very gracious. She's like, "You good headphones?" So I would had headphones for a little bit, and then I was like, man, these headphones are getting tiring. Just like looking back and go back, or I would just, hey, is it alright if I take my headphones for a little bit?
That's amazing. That certainly takes some major patience. I'm guilty of, I'll build, and if I'm editing to a loop, I'm like trying to find the right cadence, and I will play the same song probably 40 times and not be aware of it. And then, the same of, hey, so like headphones, they're a thing. And that's so good.
Yeah, we have this joke that sometimes, like for someone who's not actively working on the computer, in this case, like composing, like for someone else who's just there listening to this loop going on and on again, because even if you have something that's structured and has already shape, I still play it over and over. And it's like, for them, it's like watching dry paint. It's just like nothing happens. You're like, why are you listening to this for the last hour and nothing happened? I'm like, I promise you, something's changing. I hope.
That makes me think of, okay, creative process wise, let's say you grind and you're building out a composition for a scene. What's your process around set it down, take a lap? Do you give yourself a day? Do you go to sleep, wake up the next morning?
That is a great question. And honestly, I think I'm still finding it. Like I'm still fine tuning it. But specifically for Unidentified Objects, how it was, because we started so early on, I had a lot of time to like process and like work things out, and I had other jobs like that came up, and so I like stopped for a little bit and came back, and so it was awesome because it allowed me to not only take one day but maybe take 1 week and go back and listen, and then also see how the movie evolved, because a lot of the shape that is made, even how the script says one thing, how it's shot is another thing, and then but once it's in the cutting room and they're putting it together, that like really starts informing us a lot more about how it's going to end up being and the tone of it and all that. Yeah, I think it was work on something. I usually love to sleep on it, at least like finish something, be able to sleep on it and check it out the next day. But again, sometimes there's no time. So really just do it and get it out. And yeah, so like right now I'm working on scoring a short film. Right now it's like a teaser that we're hoping to get funding and all that. But yeah, I'm like, after this, I need to go back and just keep going really quick.
At the Q&A, I asked you, were you inspired more from a visual perspective first, or is it more of the auditory and then you're connecting what you're seeing visually? I always find that music for me is what directs what I am cutting visually. So it's always it's such a gift. And Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, any of that type of language, it's the muse of creativity. When she blesses you and you have that strike of clarity of this needs to go, here's this cut, and it comes together. That's such a good feeling. When you actively produce a project and it's finished, does it feel monumental? Does it feel complete? Or what does that feel like for you?
I think that I'm in the camp that you never finish a project, you just have a deadline. Like you have to deliver it. You could stay on it for a while. But I must say, because taking a step back, and we had several screenings, and Unidentified Objects has been all around the world in different festivals. So I had a chance to like disconnect and then see it again almost as a new experience, even though I've seen the movie like 20,000 times. But like, I feel very proud of what this is. Like, even though like I wish I could have done this, or there's always room for improvement. And I think that's the journey that we're all in. But it also feels good to be like, you know what, I'm very proud of this one. And I'm glad I can share it with the world and even listen back to it and just enjoy it. Because it is a trip, like no pun intended on the road trip film. But the music does go places, and it does weird things that I'm like, how did I do that? I don't remember.
Yeah. My friend that I went with, he was like, how do you think, there was one particular scene where he was like, what was that tone, that the sound design, it just blindsides you in the best way with the intensity of the scene. So I was like, oh, that was just such a awesome experience. Without spoiling it, do you have any favorite moments in the film Unidentified Objects that you're really proud of how it turned out?
Yes. I think one of my favorite scenes is the diner, when Peter and Winona are two characters, no spoiler alerts, but they're having a really beautiful conversation. And yeah, first the scene is amazing. They're acting, it's just like, you just connect with these characters so much. But then when the music starts there, and I remember when I created that music, and it's the simplest thing like ever. And I think with music, one of the hardest things is making it simple, but still complex enough that it communicates and it makes you feel. And this one was just, I think it was one synth. I'm not a violin player, but I play like this really like airy, like just violin, like holding this thing, and maybe there's one pad, but it's very simple. It's just like chords that like swell and go away and then swell again and go away. And even to now, like I hear that sound. It's so warm, and it's coming from an analog synth. That's where I can feel like, oh yeah, I could never do that inside the computer. That's just like the circuitry and the warmth of cable, or like all that is just like making this flow. And then the harmony, remember when I was playing with it on the keyboard and triggering the synthesizer and all that, I'm like, man, there's something really beautiful about this. And then how it got into the scene and how it's used, it felt perfect because it's so like simple, but it tells me like kind of like human just emotions. And also it's really not telling you like you should feel this way. It's more like it's there, but you can reflect yourself on it. And I love that about it, that this scene you can interpret however you want, but the music is just there telling you, allowing you to like, hey, feel, allow yourself to just go in. And so I that's one of my favorite moments, and seeing how the music came to be too was just like, yeah, it was like everything lined up, and it was like, yes, I love this.
Was there any scenes that you found really challenging? What was the scene that it just took a lot to dial in or find the right hit, the right resonance?
I think there were a couple. I think one of the ones that I know I did several versions, and that was very important to fine tune and find the tone, was when they got stopped by the cops.
Yeah.
So that one, I have probably 2 or 3 other versions that I showed my brother, probably a lot more that I didn't show, but they were very dark, and they were like really almost like horror film, and and it was like, it's not about that. It has this element of what's happening, but it's really about the emotion. And what I found out, this music from the diner that I was telling you about earlier, that became like Peter's theme for pain in a way. So it's very subtle, and it's not the same piece, but it's all inspired on that. And it's like his longing to be loved. It became not about how dark and scary and weird the situation is, but more about him and his pain. So that one was a hard one to crack.
I love how you're describing a particular range of sound, identifying with the person's heartstrings or the continuation of the character. One of my all-time favorite films is called The Brothers Bloom, and there's a particular piece from the Soundscore that's called Penelope's Theme, and they weave it through establishing shots, character shots, but that piece of music is, to me, one of the most beautiful sound scores that I've ever heard. And it's the way that it hits, and the character, and this like pure, just there's a very fresh part of her energy. So now I'm so excited to watch Unidentified Objects again, to just like really be cognizant of how you created the sound design. The scene when he gets pulled over, that environment, that was a very startling, like I was shook from observing the scene, because it's exactly how you're describing it's just like the intensity of his heart and his soul around this particular moment. There's light being shed on it. It was like such an insane scene to me. Yes. So freaking cool. So if Unidentified Objects is a form of a sci-fi drama, do you have any favorite genres that you really love to compose for?
Yes, I love animation. Is one of the, I just love animation. It could be any world inside animation. It allows for the music to go an extra step. A lot of times with animation, it's just go for it. And the music can just be there and take charge. And I wrote the music for this really beautiful short film a couple years back called Dreamsheep. And there was no dialogue, none. So the music just carries everything, and so that is something that was very special for me. The music, it was giving a playground and say, hey, come and play, and just how can the music takes us through the journey and express the emotions that they are not telling us about or they're not expressing with their voice. Music is a great tool to just tie us to the character or tie us to situations or relationships or emotions in the film. Whenever I can, I try to do that and really map out, like, through the arc of the story where our main character or where the theme is going to be. So subconsciously or consciously, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes the music has to come in and say, yes, this is about this character and this is why we're hearing this theme. Like Indiana Jones. So like whenever you hear, dun, 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 it doesn't matter if Indiana Jones is not on the screen, he's present. So I try to do that as well, because even if you're not seeing it, you're like, oh, there's something that's related to this character and this emotion. And it's there in Unidentified Object, and it's there in Dreamsheep too. It's a story about this little girl and a sheep, and they have a relationship. So each one has their theme, and the sheep came from like the dream world. So there's a theme from the dream world that's connected to the sheep.
Cool.
And so it all starts first out like a music box that plays the sheep theme because it's attached to it. And then when we go to the dream world, that like little music box that was playing, it becomes a whole orchestra. So you suddenly hear this theme.
I got goosebumps.
And now it's like this like really playful orchestra playing the same melody, but in a very different arrangement and a lot more like just lifting us. So it's amazing just how we can like simplify things and make it as small as a music box and as big as a full like orchestra. And for that one, we got to record a live orchestra in Colombia, and it was just a dream come true. Go back to my hometown, record with the Medellin Philharmonic, and it was a dream. So yeah, that's basically, to answer your question, is yeah, animation I love. But also adventure, and anything that has to do with like adventure, and I love that too. I love orchestra. Oh, and I was thinking a lot recently about because sometimes I work on projects that are like, they're great and fun, but somehow I've discovered like, I don't feel as attached to this project. Like I'm doing it, and it also sometimes becomes, not every day, but like sometimes it is a job, and you have to pay our rent and all that. But I realized that I love movies that have heart, and that really make that very explicit in a way that you attach to the characters and you care about them. And it takes the time to invite the audience to be part of their story. Because sometimes there's films that just get too involved maybe in the action or in this next, and I'm like, but what about like the characters? I'm not really connected to any of them. It could be animation, it could be live action, but if it has heart, I'm in.
That's a really good point around how do you differentiate of any genre to have something that has soul that you feel hits on a deeper level. That's really cool. But wait, okay, we got to go back to, you went back to, am I saying right, Medellin, where you're from? So the Philharmonic Orchestra, what was that like? Like how did that get set up? What, were you there on site? What was that experience like?
Yeah, that one is a short film that it's directed and created by one of my really good friends, very talented director, Lulu Vieira. And she came up with the story, and it was a whole feature film. And then she's like, all right, let's bring it down. Let's build up to that. So we created a teaser. We sent it out to this competition in Colombia. We got funding. And so it became a 8.5, 9-minute short film. And so she, very amazing, talented, driven, she put it together. And so I was in LA and we worked remotely. Same, very similar, just sending things back and forth, getting ideas, developing the themes for each character. Nowadays with computers, we can just create and create mock-ups of orchestras, and that sounds very real. But to me, there's nothing, and my favorite part is recording and working with musicians and actually getting the people sweating in a room and actually recording and making music come to life. And because music was so important in this, and Lulu gave that importance to it as well. She said this music needs to be live and we need to record it live. And there wasn't a lot of a big budget or anything, but we're like, all right, let's do it. And Medellin, being that everything was in Medellin, like the production, the animators, everything was there. We say like, why not? We look at different options, but that would be the best scenario. Once that was like kind of like approved and scheduled, everything was contracted by their people and led by Lulu. But when I created the score, the sheet music for each instrument and each player, and then I flew to Colombia, to my city. Then we had one day rehearsal, which was, this is what I love about working with live players, is I've been working with, it took on and off a while, like a couple of months to kind of put everything together while the animation was finalized. So we've been living with this music that we know how it sounds. We know the themes, we know everything. But when you have musicians bring it to life and breathe life into it, that is the best. So like we went to the rehearsal and I just put like the sheet music in front of them that I wrote down. Lulu, our director, helped me print the tape and all that. And then so putting it there and then just hearing them start playing it and start like playing the melodies that we've been living with for the past couple months and just like seeing it come to life is just, it's the best. I wish that everyone could experience that because it's just so magical how that works. And then we ended up recording with them and it was just amazing. And it's so one of the best experiences that I've had on a project.
One of the most profound things that's rocking my world in production is the power of being in the room, especially if you know the people, or even if you don't, it's somebody else's work of art. The concept that you had an idea of what the sound could be, and then you took something from your mind, your spirit, your heart, whichever part that resonance came from, and then you end up in a room where people are expressing it, and then you are experiencing it back. That blows my mind.
Yes. Oh man, I love how you put it. That is it.
It's so profound. I just have so much reverence for film production because it's not on just a two-dimensional surface, because it has 5 layers of so many different variables of art and the format. And wow, I can only dream of how special that must have felt to be in the room and to have that sound hit your ears, and that sounds like a moment.
Yeah, I think there's probably a video somewhere of it, but I remember just like I had a smile from me, like I just couldn't contain it. I was like, what is this? It's so magical. And then also relief. What's in the page is actually sounding good. Okay, good.
Whew, yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so bucket list projects. You've been prolific. Your composing resume is so awesome. What's next for you? What's something that's in your heart to create?
Right now, like I said, I'm working on this really beautiful short film. It's based in San Andres, which is an island in Colombia. And yeah, so that I'm very excited about. But I think bucket list project, and one, like, it would be my dream is to compose music for Pixar, Disney, get into that world, and gotten a little bit of a taste in some of the projects where I worked like on Encanto and Wreck-It Ralph and on Strange World in different capacities, but just opening the little doors. Oh my God, this would be amazing to do this and to, yeah, just play, have fun with that stories. I grew up with Disney and I know, and their music, and they're really music focused, and it's just, everything is, it's magical. And so yeah, that would be a dream of mine, like a bucket list. Let's go for that.
Beautiful. Okay, beyond the field, beyond you actively working in sound, do you have sounds that strike nostalgia for you? Like you hear the sound of a particular kind of bird, or when you hear eggs on a griddle, it takes you to a moment. Do you have any moments like that stand out?
Man, I have to think about that one. That's a very good question. I don't know with sounds specifically. Maybe like a breeze through trees or something like that. I think what connects me with home a lot, and I grew up like in Medellin is a valley, and it's very green, it has trees everywhere. So I think maybe that's, but what at least connects me more smells. Like
yes,
aromas.
yes.
That's very similar to music, I think, but that it can transport you in places or in time. So that will definitely do it. Just even here in LA, it's weird. Like some people outside, oh, it smells like Christmas in Colombia. That's pretty cool.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I
hadn't been in LA in probably 12 years. And so it was totally a blast from the past to just, I was like, I forgot the foliage here and the landscape is so beautiful.
Yeah. I must say, like, this year has been very strange because it's been raining a lot, which rarely happens. I remember when I first moved here, like 3 days a year spread out, it rained, but nothing, it's just dry. But this December, January, February, it's just been raining. So everything is green, everything is lush. I go outside every day, man, this is so beautiful. Why didn't I notice this before? I'm like, it was just dry. But now,
wow.
it's yeah, it's
so I lucked out. I lucked out is what I'm hearing. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, this is another behind the scenes lifestyle question. Do you take precautions to protect your ears?
That is a very good question, and I think I should do more. I'm always listening to things in moderate levels and not just like blasting. I've worked with people that are just like turning it up to 11, and I'm like, ugh. And sometimes part of my work is being at a dub stage. When I'm working as a music editor, usually I'm at a dub stage for a few weeks, which is where a dub stage is basically a movie theater that has a mixing console in the middle with a bunch of like faders and knobs and all that. And we mix the movie. So the dialogue, the sound team, like it all comes together. A music team, which usually I'm there if I'm the music editor. And we mix. So whatever you hear on the screen, someone placed it there and mixed it there and said, this is going to be at this volume with this reverb, this speaker. Everything's so detailed. So being in that environment, you're listening to one scene over and over and over. And you imagine spending all day at the movie theater with a shootout going on. Your ears are going to be pretty hurt at the end of the day. So I'm always like wearing protection for my ears or just, so I think that's one way I do it. But the other thing I need to get is open headphones. So I currently have ones that are closed and they're great because there's noise canceling and all that, but having some that are open will just let the music, like the waves breathe a little bit and not just stay there and press against my eardrum. But yeah, I think
about that. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. All right. I just figured, I know there's certainly things in my life where I think of, if I can't use my hands, that would just be a total deal breaker whenever we're actually.
Have you seen Sound of Metal?
No.
Oh my, I don't want to spoil it, but I recommend it. It's an incredible movie, but when I watched it, I was like, I appreciate my ears so much. Not only because I work with them, but because like, how would it be if I can't use them anymore and they're gone? And I don't know how that would be, but the movie shows it, and the sound design is amazing on it. So it really put me on that spot. And it's a devastating but beautiful told story, but I recommend it. And it's just, but definitely scary to think, my eyes or I'm pretty blind and wearing contacts right now, but like I was saying, ooh, what would it be without my senses and being able to see or hear? It's just terrifying. Yeah.
I'm always very aware in that as well. My other big question, it's abstract. Do you hold a music composition in your mind? For me, I am sampling off of other people's music and I'm putting that with whatever we're creating in the video world. Do you ever like stockpile for particular projects?
I think I have scores that I just love and I can listen to them like all the time. But part of what I like about doing what I do is each project is so different. So maybe there's some scores that I would go back to, but I always like, which might not be the best because sometimes like you need to turn things around quickly and you're like, it would be good if I had stockpiled some. But I usually try to start each project with a blank slate. Kind of, hey, this is a new take. Let me digest and just listen to see the story and take in and explore different soundtracks that could be inspiring. I think definitely for composition, like I said earlier, it's good to have references. But as a music editor, what I do sometimes is create temp scores. And what temp scores are is before the composer gets involved, and sometimes years before an animation. For example, in Encanto for Disney, I got to work on it like 2 or 3 years before it was released. And there were still like storyboards and developing the story, but they need music to help tell the story. So I have a library with any soundtrack you can think of. And which in a way is not that great because you have too many options, but then you just go in there and kind of, what's the tone for this? What's the sound? What's the instrument? What instruments we're using for this world? All right, Encanto's in Colombia, so maybe there'll be like guitars or timples or like this rhythms and this percussion, and so like you narrow it down, but create scores out of music from other films. So start cutting in. Of course, a scene in a different film is not the same as the scene in this film, so I can't just plug it and it works. Sometimes it does and it's great, but most of the time it doesn't. So you have shaping other films' scores into this new one. And then ultimately it helps as a reference for the composer. And when I work as a composer, I usually do my own temping as well. So I can try different things and explore like where it could be and already eliminate, that doesn't work. Maybe this is the direction that we're going with. And Yeah, so I don't stockpile. I wish maybe I did, but I just enjoy just taking it in all anew. And then as far as scores that I love John Williams is one of my favorite film composers. So Jurassic Park to me is like one of the best scores out there. And E.T. and I think for me, not every cue, but his melodies, again, going back to the themes, he's so prolific at creating themes that you can attach yourself to and just go on a journey with. And then ultimately, like I said earlier, I like music that makes me feel something. And so it's where I was like, is it always kind of like melancholic that I like? Yes, but happy too. But I think when it hits the heartstring, I'm like, I like that music.
Yes, it's got to have that soul, even if the soul takes you somewhere that is like a heavy or an internally focused. Productivity wise, do you have any set rituals? Like, I know that if I am putting a project off and I need to bust out all the stops, if I go to a coffee shop and get a chocolate chip cookie, I'm going to do work. And it's the most illogical thing. Do you have any equivalent things that help you drop in when you're in your creative tension?
That is funny. I don't think I have one conscious if I do this, but if I think back, I know when I'm like crunch time and I need to I'm going to go to the supermarket and get like a kombucha. I don't know why. It just, if I get it, I'm like, all right, I think I'm working now. It's so weird. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't think I do it consciously. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, it's one of those neural wiring where you're like, okay, I'm going to have these good nutritional things to fuel my mind.
Yeah, I'll get a salad this time. And
that's so good. Okay, so the kombucha. Wait, which flavor of kombucha are your go-tos?
I love this. I can't remember the name of the brand exactly, but it's a Mystic Mango. I love mango too, so it kind of works out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that. I love the classic GT Dave's, the gingerberry, anything with ginger.
Oh, ginger. Yeah, ginger is everything. Anything with ginger is delicious.
So good.
Sure.
What are any other environmental things? Like, I know for me, when I put my noise canceling headphones on and I put my like blue light blocking glasses, that's another trigger for me that I'm like, okay, I'm in the zone. Do you have any other environmental triggers to help you drop into your zone of genius?
I think the noise canceling does help, because even this is fairly quiet, but just kind of like that extra just isolates the world. That helps me too. I think sometimes it's just not even being there, but just like going outside and stepping away from my computer, walking on the grass, or taking a little bit of time to not be on my computer and just look outside, look at nature. I think nature is, I just wish I could spend more time on it or in it and maybe have the computer outside, but you can't always do that, or rarely.
No. It always seems like a good idea until you get out there and then you're like, everything is overheating, including myself. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think nature, like going out for a walk or taking my shoes and walking barefoot on grass is a good way to just, I feel like in a way it's like letting go of everything that I have and discharging and leaving all that on the ground, almost a ground prong on an electrical outlet, and just like doing that and then coming back and like fresh.
Ooh, I love that visual of that it's literally just like a decharging from all of our like static electrical world. Oh, what about when you're not, what's your equivalent of when you're just vegging out and you want to hear some music that you enjoy? What's on your Spotify playlist?
Man, there's many different, I think. On one end is classical music. Beethoven is one of my favorite composers, so I would listen to his symphonies, just go through them. Symphony number 6, I love, but you take your pick. They're all beautiful. So that's one, but on the other hand, I love like guitar like that, so like Jack Johnson, and there's a amazing artist, Jorge Drexler, I think he's from Uruguay. He's a poet, and his like music is beautiful, but then his lyrics, they're so well thought out. I love that. And yeah, I think film scores, sometimes I stay away from them because I'm listening to it all the time for work. The other thing I do love, and I don't know if you dance, but I love salsa. I grew up in Colombia and I love like dancing. So anything that has like salsa, I love. Dance with my wife or just whatever, but you just put it in the house while we were doing whatever. It's always fun. Yeah. And then I playing the piano, just whatever, just picking up. Oh, musicals too. I forgot that one. I love musicals. Disney, of course, but Book of Mormon, Hamilton, just any Wicked, any of those is so cool.
Cool. I always appreciate getting to drop into people's wormhole of, what are the sounds that just help you feel a little more centered, especially coming off of creative projects. Okay. My other question for you is, was there a particular moment, if it's happened yet, maybe it hasn't, what project have you experienced that after that it felt as though it was like your first big break, or like you were like, I feel like I am starting to step into something and this is feeling like the real deal?
I don't know if it's just one particular. I think I feel like I have two parallel careers. I think one is a composer and one is a music editor. I think in my composer career, I still am yearning for that opportunity in that moment that I'm like, I'm working towards, and I'm in the lookout for like, all right, making this happen, and hope it will happen in the near future. But I'm committed to I see it as a marathon. I love what I do, so I'll just keep going. But for music editing, it's been happening like slowly and progressively. I fell into the music editing world without even knowing that I was pursuing it. I was working on a project as a composer, as an assistant to the composer, and I was doing arrangements, and they're like, hey, the person who usually goes to the dub stage to mix and represent the music is not available. The music, you want to go as a music editor? I'm like, that's pretty cool. I enjoy this work, and it's fun, and it keeps me like connected to the music. Another project, it was the same, where I was working in a different capacity, and they're like, hey, we need a music editor. So I fell into that. And so I started pursuing that activity. Hey, this is actually a really interesting world that I never considered before, and I enjoy, and it makes me a better composer because I'm working with music and picture at the same time, and telling stories and being in the room with the directors and all that. So I'm like, this is a very cool world that I never considered. Let me try it. So I started doing that, pursuing that. And when I got into the Editors Guild, it really changed things for me because it allowed me to access projects that are union and I couldn't work on before. So that opened, I think, a door. But then I think there was one project that I could say it really changed things for me, and it was Finch, that was released by Apple starring Tom Hanks. And that one, and I think the reason was because it was at the time one of the biggest films that I've worked in as a music editor, but also because I got to be a part of it from the very beginning. I remember getting a call like and I think maybe it was one of the first projects that they said, hey, are you available? The movie starts in 3 months, but if you're around, we would love to have you. And I'm like, really? This is what? This doesn't happen. Like, you have to at least audition or at least like interview. But they're like, no, I had developed relationships with people that are in the film, and they're like, yeah, well, we want to bring you on, but it's 3 months from now. So I'm like, you mean I have a job like in 3 months? That's pretty cool. I'm always like, before that, I was always looking for the next thing next week, or after I finish this, I don't have anything. So I was like, that's pretty awesome. And then also creatively, I got to start when the film started, or when they finished production. So when the editor was putting the cut together. So I got to see the 3.5 hour version of the film. And then I got to see all the iterations in between and how it evolved, and how amazingly they converted like scenes that were very long into much shorter, or it's unbelievable. It is movie magic.
Wow.
I don't know how they made this whole thing into this, and how they changed it. So I was there for the whole thing, including temping. So I was temping, creating the temp score for everything. But then I also got to work with Gustavo Santaolalla, who's Academy Award winning composer. He's from Argentina. So we have a lot of Latin roots that we could connect, and dream. I love his music too. So for me, a dream to work with him and be part of the rest of the process of working with the composer, going to the scoring stage and recording. We went to Warner Brothers scoring stage, Eastwood scoring stage, to record 70-piece orchestra, and then going to the dub stage to finish the film. So it was, kind of like the first time that I got to see everything from beginning to end. And for that movie, which is starring Tom Hanks and with some really important people behind it. And so it's, I think that one. And then slowly, I think others like creeped in, and working with Disney has been a dream too. But yeah, I mean, I feel very blessed that I've been able to have gotten those opportunities, and have been able to develop those relationships, and that those relationships call me back and they want to continue working with me. So cherish that. It's amazing. And also to be able to go back and work with what it is a family, basically. Like whenever you get to go back and work with the same people, it's, hey, how's it going? It's been a few months or maybe a year or 2 years, but like, what are you up to? Let's do this again in a different story. So yeah, I think that's, and for composing, I'm still working strong. And like I said earlier, for me, for both, it's just, I feel lucky that I get to do this and that I get to work in this industry and that I discovered it, because I didn't really started off like saying, hey, I want to be a film composer. It was like, I want to do like music and produce records. But then finding this and being able to live with this and don't tell anyone, but getting a paycheck at the end of the week after you work, I'm like, really? I get to do this and you pay me? Awesome. That feels really nice.
What do you feel the role of community played in your career and in your creative world?
I think the part of networking and finding like the people that you want to work with, it's everything. Because definitely work on projects where maybe you just don't connect with the filmmakers, or maybe it's like just one off and they're off to another thing. And it is, sometimes you just don't connect with people. But when you find the people that are like really become family, I think it's amazing. But I must say, like, I do long for more community too. A lot of my work is really in this room or another dark room where it's just me by myself and the computer. And it's hours and days like that. So I miss being able to talk to someone and like bounce ideas off of each other. I think collaborating it's kind of, there's room, and I enjoy like the solo part where I'm just on my own, because it's important to develop ideas and create things. But sometimes it's like that becomes like everything. But also when you're collaborating with filmmakers, one of the best parts is getting ideas and getting feedback. And even though honestly sometimes it's annoying, I wrote this, it's the best thing in the world, why are you giving me feedback? I don't know, someone in the record world, maybe they get feedback from the producer, but usually it's, hey, the music is the music and I'm the artist and I wrote it and it's the best. All right, ship it. Here, I wrote the music, I love it. No, it's not. No, it's not working for the scene. And you're like, what do you mean? So it can be frustrating, but it is those moments that you get to create something better and something that challenges you and takes you out of something that you would not have written otherwise. I think Unidentified Objects, to me, if I go back and listen to all my scores previously, I have never written anything like it. And I think it has to do with, of course, the story, of course, the nature of being in the synth world. But it all comes down to the collaboration with my brother and having someone that says, let's try this other thing. Let's think about it in a different way. Let's explore other sounds. This is more about this character and not this character, or the music should shift in this moment and not in this moment. Like very detailed work that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, but it gives me those moments of like collaboration. And then similarly when we're in a different way, but also collaboration with working with musicians. And whenever I get to, for example, one of my dreams that I still can't believe it happened to me, but I was manning my own business and I get a call from Disney and they said, hey, we want you to produce the music for the next trailer for Encanto. And so like here is like things that you would never think of, where Disney is a company and a studio that I love and I love their films. Then you have Encanto, which is a music about Colombia, where I'm from, and then when I learn is, and the music that I'm producing is a song written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is a hero of mine too. And it's going to be performed by Carlos Vives, which was one of the biggest artists in Colombia. And I love his music. And so I'm like, wait, what? You want me to do what? Like, really? No, wait. And I was like keeping my cool in the interview and all that while we were talking. But inside I was like, what is happening? This is insane. But what was cool about that, going back to the collaboration part of it, was that of course, I told him, like, can I record in Colombia? Can I get players from Colombia? And they're like, of course, just do what you want to do and get the people that you want. So I called and I got some of the best players in Colombia to perform. And I was working here, so everything was remotely. And I was like, hey, all by phone or video calls, but like how to get them to perform and get this. And I will mock up things for them and they will or write the parts for them so they would play them. But that, even if it was at a distance, having everyone coming together from so far away too. From Colombia, I'm here. Our mixer was in Miami, or is in Miami. And so it's this whole community of Colombians just coming together and putting this, and it came out and it was awesome. And yeah, Disney loved it. And I was like, yeah, I'm very proud of it. And I got to be a part of it. Yeah, that was very cool.
Oh, especially something that For you to get to be in that role of you give the call to say, hey, we have this project and we want these musicians, and you get to be the man that's like bringing it together. That's one of my favorite experiences, when I can come and add value to be like, guys, like we have a cool project to do. Like it's the best feel.
That is so true. It felt so good. And I've done a few others since that where I'm like in the driver's seat. Because usually I think as a composer, there's a room where there's room for that being in that seat and driving, but you're still looking for the director. There's a lot of more creative input. But in this one, I think I really got to be like, go. And then there's a budget, so everyone will be paid well and accordingly. Like it's awesome. I'm no longer asking favors for people that are way too talented to be doing favors for free, things like that. So And I remember, hey, we're doing this. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, how much do you charge? I'm like, this much. I'm like, all right, you got it. It's all good. We're doing it. And so having that power is very cool. And be able to support also artists, because I know it's not easy, but you have super talented people that struggle too. So being able to say, this is a serious project and I'm not asking for a favor. We're doing this together. I think that's awesome, being in the driver's seat. I want to do more.
Same. I know. It's the best feeling to be collaborative and have a budget and get to pay people what they're worth. It's it's elevating. What about, what was I feel like anytime that I hear like the breakthrough into LA or the breakthrough into New York, how was your first few years being in LA? What was your feeling like you got anchored in that community? What was that like?
That I look back at that moment in my life and I feel so lucky and so grateful that I had a support system with my family that just gave me, basically, not that I needed it, but they just gave me all the energy and like strength to do it. Because I moved out of Colombia when I was 19. I went to school in Full Sail University in Orlando, and that's where I kind of like said, hey, film music, this is pretty cool. Because my dream at that moment was, I'm going to open a recording studio and produce records. But there I met a lot of the people in the film department. I think I could do this. This is pretty cool. I enjoy movies. I love movies, music. Yeah, you put them together, perfect. But then I graduated. I had sent resumes out. I was looking here in LA and New York and all that. But I was close to Miami. My family was in Miami at the time. So I was like, all right, moving to Miami after graduation. I need a roof. I'll stay with my parents, look for a job. And I maybe this is extending the story a bit longer, but I just feel so lucky and I'm so happy that I made that decision. But I moved to Miami. I started working as a PA in a TV production. And then I became the sound assistant and I was working. I was getting paid. I was like, all right, awesome. And it's good. But then I was like, I want to pursue music for film and this is my dream. And then months before I got the job, I got that job in Miami. I had sent resumes out to Florida and I had gotten questionnaires like, hey, do you want this, all that? And I sent it back hoping for the best. The only thing I knew was like, this is like we can't tell you who it is type of thing. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so nothing came out of it. I started working in Miami and then all of a sudden I get a call from this composer. I didn't know who he was. And so he interviewed me on the phone and it went really well. And he's like, when can you start? And I'm like, I live in Miami. And he's, it's not going to work out. Good to meet you. I'll talk later. And I was like, I want to move to LA. And he said, if you're ever in LA, give me a call. 2 weeks later, I had a little window at work and I say, okay, I'm going to take 2 days off. And I flew to LA. I came here for 4 days, like Thursday, Friday, and the weekend. And so I got here and I called him like, hey, I'm in LA. And I'm too busy. Call me tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, man. But then the next day I called him and he's like, all right, I have 10 minutes for lunch. Come over. And so I went and I met him. We talked. We had a really great conversation for 20, 30 minutes. And then he said, I already have an assistant. Thank you for coming. Very nice to meet you. But I told him like, hey, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. If you need an extra pair of hands, anything you need, I want to be here. And so I left it at that. And thinking back, I don't think I told him that I was still living in Miami. I just said, hey, I'm your guy. So I moved to Miami. I worked for another month, a month and a half. And then his assistant called me and says, hey, we have an internship. It's non-paid, but it's yours if you want it. And so I was like, here in Miami, have a job. I'm close to my family, all that. And but what to do. And so I remember calling my parents desperately. I'm like, what to do? Like, I told them like, hey, I'm working right now, but can I call you back in a bit? Let me solve this. Please don't give the job to anyone else. Let me just like sort this out. So I called my parents. They didn't pick up. I called my sister, she's unbelievable. I love her. And she's the best. She's a life coach, but she's been a life coach ever since I've known her. She's amazing. So I called her and she's, yeah, what are you going to do? You just call them and tell them you'll be there on Monday. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you're that's what you're dreaming. That's what you want. And I hang up with her and I call them like, all right. Of course, I talked to my bosses at the time and they were very supportive. And hey, if I finish working this week, and they're like, you're all good, go follow that. And so I called them and so I'll be there on Monday. And I literally finished working that week. I packed on Saturday, flew on Sunday, and I was here on Monday working. And funny, it's going to be 15 years tomorrow. Yeah. So it's June 2nd, 2008 that I moved here. And so that's how it started. And when I got here, like, it was an internship. So it was like work 4 hours every day, Monday through Friday. But I was like, I had to have nothing else to do. Can I work more? Like, I want to stay here. And also, I'm from Colombia. I need to get sponsored for a visa. And I was like, this is my chance after you graduate from school, you have 1 year to work as like practical training. So I had 1 year to get a work visa so I could stay here. So I'm like, I need to just bet everything on this. Like, I'm going all in. And so I started working instead of 4 hours a day. I started getting there at 9, started working until 2 a.m, weekends, just like I was at a theme park. I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. I love it. And so a month and a half later, they hired me full time. And I was there for 3.5 years. And that's really what I would say, like, that was a big break for me, because it really opened the door and it gave me a chance to build on what I had learned in college, because I think they had really good foundations. But this is like how to write music for movies. Not necessarily how to write, but like, how does everything work behind the scenes? When you're writing, how does the studio work? My background was very technical. I was like an engineer, so I could tear down the studio, put it back together, record, prep everything for orchestra. And at the time, we were working on Beverly Hills, Chihuahua. And so it was like, it's this really cute film that I don't know how good it is, but I enjoyed it. And the music is great. So I was just having the best time in the world. And we went to record Eastwood Scoring Stage at Warner Brothers. So it was like, man, I'm this kid from Colombia that maybe a year ago was like, I don't know, or 2 years ago was like in high school, like not knowing that this could ever happen, not in my dreams, not in a million years. And here I am working on a Disney film at Warner Brothers, recording an orchestra. And so that to me is just unbelievable. And like I said earlier, like my family, how supportive they were and how they were just like encouraging me all the time. And even if they were like far, they were just always there for me, very supportive. And so I couldn't have done it without them. So I had that really good support system. And then here, now I think I've evolved in my life where I'm like, work is not everything in life. And I'm married. I have a 5-month-old baby that I just I'm just melting every day. But life is more than work. But at the time, I didn't have anything else. This is what I want to do. And I just dove head in first. And I was like, let's just do this. So I was there for 3.5, 4 years. I became like the main assistant for this composer. And yeah, it was just like, it really felt like a master's degree in film scoring. It's like, if you're going to go to college to study this is live, like real experience of how things work. And we collaborated with some of the best composers in LA, and it just couldn't believe that that was what I was doing and that could happen. Yeah.
It's sweet to hear that you had that support of your family and your sister being like, you get on a plane and tell them you're going to be there on Monday. Like this, that's such a beautiful trajectory. What advice would you give somebody that wants to go after their creative dreams, has something in their heart of, I think that I want to produce something on a bigger scale? What advice would you give them?
There's no taking a step back. Just go forward. Just follow your dream. Like, you can do it. And I think I lived with that all those years where I was like, just stay focused. Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I was looking for someone to open the door this much and just to let me show them what I can do. And I will just put my foot there and not let them close it, because I can show how good I am and that I'm here and that I know what, like, I can bring it and I can do this. And that's what happened. They opened the door and I'm like, I'm staying. I'm going to prove to you that this is what I want to do. And I'm going to give it everything that I can. Even if you're not paying me, I'm doing it. Back then, it was like, I just love this so much. I need to do it. After I started that work that I was doing, I was getting very anxious because I'm like, man, we're never going to get done. It's a lot of work and we're recording next week. But I remember the music editor in that project, she was awesome. And she gave me 3 tips. Like, the first one was sleep when you can. The second one was always say yes to free food. And then the third one is it always gets done. It always gets done. Just know that it will get done. And it doesn't mean, oh, just relax and like it will get done. No, it means know for certain it will get done. And just keep pushing through, keep rowing, just keep swimming.
Yes. Yeah. Oh.
And then I grew up, this is kind of like a side thing, but I also carry it with me always. I grew up sailing. My dad taught us, my brother and I, and we grew up in this like lake near our house. We learned how to sail. And then I've gone sailing a few like bigger boats and I got a license and all that. But I think sailing is very similar to life. And I love being out in the breeze, but it's also very like metaphorically very close to basically what life is. And in sailing, you're always like the wind is always flowing, or most of the time is always going one direction. And you can always sail in the same direction as the wind. So you just set your sails and you can go that direction. But you can also go against the wind sometimes. And it matters how you set your sails and you're in the direction that you're taking the boat. So you're saying like, I'm going this way, and you just set your sails in the right way and you'll go there. Even if you drift a little bit along the way, you just keep correcting your course and keep like aiming. If you have to turn and go like the other way, but as long as you keep your like where you're going, like as long as you know where you're going, you just set yourself straight and you will make it, even if it takes a little bit longer, but you will make it.
You have to have your sails set in the direction that you want to go. And supportive. What are the platforms that Unidentified Objects are going to be accessible on? How can people support that film and participate?
Thank you. Yes. So any platform where you can rent, so Amazon, YouTube, iTunes, anything where you can rent a movie, it's going to be there. June 9th is when it comes out on demand. So yeah, please support us. We're very excited to share this really beautiful film with the world. I know that everyone who's watched it always connects with it in very unique ways, but they all connect with our story and with these characters and with the music too, which I'm very proud of. And so please come out or stay in and support us.
I can't wait to watch it again as well. Okay, so everybody go on to all of your favorite platforms and write the reviews was it Amazon?
Amazon, yeah. Amazon is very helpful. Their algorithm, yeah. I think Leland was saying, like, even if you leave an A, just anything, just leave a review.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Sebastian. This has been such a treat to just dive into the mind of a fellow creative. How can people follow along with your work or just see what your career trajectory, where it goes? How can people get in touch?
At my website, sebastianzuleta.com, I keep updating it and there's a way to contact me there. But also IMDb usually has my current credits. And very soon I'm working towards putting definitely Unidentified Object score, but a lot of other projects that I've been working on Spotify coming soon. So you'll be able to find the music on Spotify too.
Thank you so much. And for everybody that's listening, thank you so much for listening, watching, and until next time.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you so much. This was awesome.